do it off the top of my head. Let's see if I can again. Okay. Hey everyone.
Hey.
My presentation is what's in a name. And the reason I didn't introduce myself is because I want to explain my name first. So, my name is Micah. I got my name from my mom because she's very religious and she thought it was a strong name because of the background of Micah from the Bible. He's from the Bible, but he's from the book of Micah. And he was chosen by God and he prophesied that God's judgment would come down to Jerusalem, but he also did like a message of hope for afterwards when like the dust cleared. So that's what she thought when she thought of me, like just someone who would be strong in their faith and hopefully like stand strong. And so the Hebrew meaning of it is who's like God, and that's something I want to like just hopefully I'll keep in mind while I go through this is like the definition of a name and like the translation, because it's Hebrew and it's not really an English name, but over like just translations it can get mixed up in like what it really means. So the second one is do people live up to their names or contradict them? So if you're familiar with Judas, he was like a disciple of Jesus, and I'm just using this as an example, and he betrayed Jesus. So that's something that a lot of people who are religious see as like a traitor type person. So it was just questioning like, would anyone name their kid Judas now? And what implications would that have on that kid's name in growing up? Just based off of a famous figure from the past. So that's my first point, would be historically ironic and famous names would be my first point. Second is why they get those names. And then third is if the child grows up and is an adult, like do they find themselves like accepting that name or changing that name? So this is an example, so just read that. And his name is Jesus Condom. So in English, it comes out as Jesus Condom. Yes. And it would be seen as like a funny name, ironic name. But Jesus in Greek is a translation of the Son of God. So that's what Jesus means. And Condom is a Gaelic or like name that reigns from Ireland. And so it's just a family name, and it doesn't mean the same thing as it does in English. So when you look into translations and the reason people are named certain ways, it can seem funny, it might even be, and they might have a sense of humor about it, but that's what it means.
There's a deeper meaning to it.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so I looked up the two most popular names for 2017 in the United States by the Social Security Administration, and it's a .gov website. And so Emma was the most popular woman's name, or baby girl's name, and it would mean whole. So like just a whole, like I don't know what, it comes from Germany, it's a German name, but like when people name them, it's like you have that in mind of like, oh, they want to be a whole, they want to be good, like that's what it means, like a sense of like just good, not missing anything. So there's a reason why people name them that. And then Liam was the most popular boy's name, and it comes from Ireland. And it's a shortened version of like William, but in Ireland it would be different, I don't know. But it's strong-willed warrior or protector. So as a boy or a man, you would want to have that foundation of being like coming off as strong, not weak or preyed upon. So that's what they would come from. And then the funny name I just showed would be an example of a funny name. And then a biblical name would be mine or any other name from the Bible, where there's a meaning and a story behind it. And so these are the reasons why people would name them, their kids this. So the religious names all have a meaning in giving honor of their faith. So a parent would name their kid Noah to show that their kid would hopefully be like a dedication to God, or showing that they are chosen by God to lead. So maybe a leadership name. And then another type of example for why parents name their children is because of just reminders of their family's ancestry and history. So I remember we were talking earlier about, like you said, you're named after your aunt. But it's not just that, it's your name because it's bringing along that history. You're not forgetting them, or you're not trying to, but like that's a reminder of like where you come from, where your family can come from, and like examples of that. Nicknames are usually just funny or can be ironic from the previous slide. Like I knew a guy whose name was Flacco, and that was his last name, but the guy was 300 pounds. So it was kind of like he enjoyed that name though. Like that was his name, and he loved the nickname or loved using his last name. And then there's other ones where like my mom tells me in Spanish and she doesn't even know her uncle's names because they only use nicknames. So it's like just comfortability and like how you want to be addressed. And so then onomastics is the study of names, and then that would also be onomatology. So that's just people who study names and see like the deeper meanings. And so those examples of reminders of family's ancestry and religious names all come from a book by Lance Charles Sun, and he did a little book about it on bookbuilder.cast.org. And so going into that, it's whether they accept their name or not. So accepting it isn't always your choice. So the two examples I found would be, one was by Mary Louise Nageta, and it was in Japan on how people change their names to like cut ties with family, even if it's last or first, because it's what you were given, and if it's not something you like approve of, you wouldn't keep it. And she said how like the families would change their names because of like the dynamic they had, and it would like see how all of that worked into their inheritance. So tradition meant you would get something, and if you were cut off or you didn't want it, the name would be changed. And so you would get nothing because of that. And then another study by Kasvadi said how people would change their names from like anti-Muslim names. So they were Muslim and they moved to Sweden, and they would change it due to societal disadvantages. So just because of that, they'd be discriminated against, and just like that. And so there's also examples of people from like Asian countries whose names aren't very easily to pronounce by English speakers, and they end up changing their name to something like familiar. And then one example I have isn't from an Asian country, but from Jamaica, and it's a famous Bob Marley. When he came into the U.S., they said how his name was like effeminate or didn't make sense to one of the custom agents, and like someone told him like, no, your name's gonna be Robert now. And he ended up going by it. So his name ended up being Robert Marley, and he went by Robert. So that's something where people end up like either accepting that name they were given or finding their own. As in like a lot of United States people who move or who find a new religion, like they find Islam, change their name. So I know one of like Lou Alcindor, if you know that. I don't know if it rings a bell, but it's a basketball player, and he changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And another one is a boxer named Cassius Clay. You familiar with him? His name now is Muhammad Ali. So they both changed their names into something that they like wanted to express themselves with. And then same with Malcolm Little, a political activist in the 60s, and he changed his name to Malcolm X, to the letter X. So it's all finding and accepting your own meaning and like finding your way. Okay, and so in conclusion, I would say people find their names to be important because they need to find meaning in life, and then maybe through your name and during those trials, you can like look at how there might be a connection and a purpose with your name. So someone who goes through so much could maybe look at their name and be like, oh, in the past, maybe this historical story of this person went through similar stuff, and it can be a meaning of like, oh, well, it's not an accident. Like there's a meaning behind it. And maybe, just maybe, like one day you live your life accordingly the way you want to, and others see it, say a family member, and then your name can be used for a child in your family. And then that would just lead on the cycle of how they see that name have meaning within you. So your story would then be what they use to think about their name or use to just spread the tradition. And so they help us figure out and finding acceptance in who we are. So my name again is Micah, and thank you.